All right, so, we've been diving deep into some pretty complex issues lately, right? And
Yeah.
this one's no exception, let me tell you.
Definitely not.
You sent over some
Yeah.
pretty intense material about, the whole arms trade situation going on in Nagaland.
Hmm.
Really is like a hidden world, isn't it?
It
It's
is.
like we're talking about this pasted text you sent over. It pulls back the curtain on,
A whole lot.
yeah, a whole lot of stuff that's happening underground.
Yeah.
So for, you, the learner out there who wants to get up to speed fast, but really like understand the nuances,
Right.
we're going to extract the key insights from this deep dive
Absolutely.
into like, the nitty gritty of who's supplying the weapons in this conflict.
Oh.
And like more importantly, why
The why is key.
this is going on, it's been going on for so long.
It has, yeah.
So we're talking about secret routes, snaking across borders,
Yeah.
hidden funders, maybe drug cartels,
Potentially?
potentially even state actors.
Possibly.
The impact on the local population, this is huge.
Absolutely.
And this sense of like a potential cover-up.
It's there.
This is a complex picture, so let's break it down, you know?
Let's unpack it.
Let's see what stands out.
All right.
So let's start with how these weapons are actually
Okay, good.
getting into Nagaland.
Mm-hmm.
The text identifies 3 main pathways.
Yeah. 3 main ones.
And the first one that really just like grabbed me was this whole border with Myanmar.
Right.
Apparently it's like a significant arms gateway.
It is. Really is. That porous border is definitely key.
Yeah.
I mean, Myanmar itself, you've got ongoing conflicts inside the country.
Right.
Numerous non-state armed groups. So it's kind of a fluid environment where weapons are just readily available.
Yeah.
The text mentions rebel groups like the Kachin Independence Army, the KIA.
Right. Trading with Naga insurgents.
Which, highlights those direct connections across borders.
So that's...
I think what's insightful here is the potential for standardization and the scale.
Yeah.
That this suggests, if these are modern, widely available Chinese designs,
right.
could indicate a more organized and potentially better equipped insurgency than just locally produced arms alone would allow.
That is a chilling thought.
It is, yeah.
And the fact that we're talking about Chinese manufactured weapons flowing through this route just adds a whole other layer of geopolitics, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, absolutely.
Makes you wonder about the broader,
the bigger picture.
Bigger picture implications.
For sure. I mean, it suggests potential external influence.
Right.
And possibly even, strategic interests at play in the region.
Yeah.
Even if it's not directly orchestrated by the Chinese state,
Right.
The mere availability of these weapons in a neighboring country
creates an opportunity.
Absolutely, for various actors.
Yeah.
Including those operating in Nagaland.
Right. So moving on, the second route mentioned is through Bangladesh and this infamous Chittagong Arms Corridor.
Mm-hmm.
This sounds like something out of a
thriller.
Like a spy movie.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The Chittagong Corridor, well-established history as a major artery for illicit trade.
Right.
And that includes arms smuggling.
Yeah.
And geographically, I mean, its location near regions experiencing armed conflict.
Makes sense.
Makes it kind of a natural conduit for weapons flowing into Northeast India.
Makes sense.
The text actually specifies AK-47s, grenades, even RPGs.
Wow.
So it gives you an idea of the volume and the types of weaponry involved.
And then we get into some really murky territory.
Murky waters.
With the rumored involvement of Pakistan's ISI in supporting certain factions. Now, this is a significant geopolitical angle. Consider, for you, the learner out there, the ISI, is Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence Agency.
Right.
And its alleged involvement just adds this whole other layer.
A whole other dimension.
Yeah, to the regional power dynamics that are at play here.
Right.
So the text suggests that there are external actors that are deliberately trying to destabilize the region.
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially.
I mean, these are long-standing allegations that reflect the broader geopolitical tensions in South Asia.
Yeah.
So if these claims are accurate, it could point to a deliberate strategy to fuel the conflict.
Right.
And exert influence in the region.
Okay, so those are the external routes.
Yeah.
But what I found particularly interesting was this third point.
Right.
Local manufacturing. So we're talking about underground workshops within Nagaland.
Within the region.
Producing crude guns, ammunition, even explosives in these remote villages.
Right.
So that suggests a degree of self-sufficiency, or at least like a localized
capacity.
To keep those arms flowing.
Yeah, and I think beyond these external pipelines, the learner, this pasted text is revealing a surprising degree of local capacity to fuel this conflict.
Yeah.
It speaks to the resilience and the adaptability of these groups.
Yeah.
I mean, it suggests that even if external supply lines were cut off, there's a local ability to sustain the conflict, maybe with less sophisticated weaponry.
Right.
But still, it highlights the difficulty in completely stopping the arms trade.
Right.
Because it's not solely dependent on cross-border smuggling.
Right. So it paints a picture of a really deeply entrenched system.
It does.
So we know how the weapons are getting there.
Right.
But the crucial question...
why?
Yeah, and as the text emphasizes is, who is bankrolling all of this?
Exactly.
It can't be cheap to keep an insurgency going this long.
It's a good point. The financial aspect is absolutely critical to understanding the longevity of this conflict.
Yeah.
And the text lays out several potential sources of funding, starting with what it terms taxation or extortion.
Right.
And what's insightful here is how it really blurs the lines between criminal activity and de facto governance in these regions.
Right.
It suggests a breakdown of state authority and the emergence of non-state actors wielding significant economic power.
So this idea that armed groups are essentially taxing various entities in Nagaland, from businesses to transport, even government employees. And the idea that officials might be paying these taxes for their own safety.
Right.
That's just...
It's unsettling.
It really complicates the picture.
It does. It raises questions about the extent to which these payments are coercive and the level of complicity within existing power structures.
And then we get into the connection to drug money.
Right.
So the link between poppy cultivation in Manipur and Myanmar and the funding of these insurgent groups. So this idea that Naga groups might be acting as couriers for drug cartels, receiving financial support.
And weapons.
And weapons in return.
Yeah.
This Golden Triangle connection really underscores the scale of this whole
illicit economy. And for those unfamiliar, the Golden Triangle is a notorious area in Southeast Asia, known for its extensive opium and heroin production.
Yeah.
So its connection here highlights how drug trafficking profits can become a major source of funding for armed groups, creating a vicious cycle of crime and conflict.
And then we get back to the geopolitical angle.
Back to geopolitics.
With the suggestion of foreign intelligence agencies playing a long game here.
Right.
These accusations against China's intelligence for potentially backing insurgencies.
Yeah.
And Pakistan's ISI for providing funds and weapons.
To destabilize the region.
Yeah. This paints Nagaland as potentially a pawn in a much larger strategic game.
It does. And these are serious allegations that reflect the complex regional power dynamics.
Right.
So if external actors are indeed providing support, their motivations could range from seeking to counter India's influence in the region to just exploiting the existing instability for their own strategic advantage.
It's a stark reminder that
what might seem like localized conflicts often have significant international dimensions.
But perhaps the most surprising, and honestly quite cynical, is the text's suggestion that Indian political factions might be secretly funding these groups for their own benefit. So this idea that keeping the region in unrest might help
certain parties maintain control.
Yeah. This raises serious questions.
It does.
About the internal dynamics and potential self-interest at play.
Absolutely.
What are some of the potential, maybe even unintended consequences
of such a strategy?
That's a particularly sensitive and potentially explosive claim.
Yeah.
If true, it suggests a deeply cynical manipulation of the conflict for political ends.
Yeah.
Some potential long-term consequences.
Yeah.
Could include further alienation of the local population.
Yeah.
A deepening of distrust in political institutions. And a perpetuation of the cycle of violence. Making a lasting peace even more elusive.
It's a truly unsettling thought.
It is.
So we've got all these weapons flowing in, all this potential funding.
Yeah.
It's easy to get lost in the logistics of it all.
Easy to get lost in the weeds.
But we can't lose sight of the human cost.
Absolutely not. And ultimately, the impact is felt most acutely by the people of Nagaland.
Right.
The text highlights the decades of continuous conflict, which has undoubtedly severely hindered economic growth in a region with immense potential and natural beauty.
And the heavy militarization.
Right. The constant presence of the Indian military.
Due to the insurgency.
That
alone can't create an environment conducive to peace or a sense of normalcy for the people living there.
Right. I mean, the heavy military presence has far-reaching social and economic consequences.
It can disrupt livelihoods.
Right.
Create a climate of fear and suspicion. And unfortunately, can sometimes further alienate the local population.
And then there's this heartbreaking reality of a generation caught in the middle. You know, these young Nagas facing an uncertain future, seemingly trapped between the underground and the government.
Absolutely. And for young people growing up in such an environment, their opportunities and their aspirations are severely limited.
It's just a cycle that's...
And the ongoing conflict can foster a sense of hopelessness. And unfortunately contribute to the perpetuation of the cycle of violence.
So difficult to break.
It is.
Which leads us to this final and perhaps most disturbing part of the text. This idea of a big cover-up. This question of why this issue isn't more widely addressed.
Why is no one talking about this?
Why it seems like there isn't more decisive action to shut down this arms trade.
The text raises some very pertinent questions about the apparent lack of decisive action. This idea of the government's silent war, where intelligence agencies might be aware of these networks, but not acting decisively, perhaps even manipulating factions. That's a particularly provocative suggestion.
It is.
It suggests a level of strategic calculation that's quite unsettling. The idea that instability might be seen as a tool for control.
And then there's the fear of the truth. This suggestion that journalists who try to investigate this are threatened.
Or silenced.
That really speaks volumes.
It does.
About the powerful forces at play and the danger.
The inherent dangers.
Of trying to uncover these hidden networks.
A free and independent press is absolutely crucial for accountability in any situation. And any threats or intimidation of journalists investigating such sensitive issues is a very serious concern.
It is.
It strongly suggests that there are actors with a significant vested interest in keeping this information hidden from public scrutiny.
And finally, the cynical view that the arms trade is simply a never-ending business for a profitable enterprise that creates a disincentive for peace.
Unfortunately, in many protracted conflict zones, there are always individuals and groups who benefit financially from the continuation of violence. The arms trade is a lucrative, albeit illicit business. And as long as there's both demand and supply,
it's going to keep going.
It's likely to persist.
That's a bleak outlook. So you see, the learner, what started as this seemingly straightforward question, where are the arms coming from, has led us down this rabbit hole.
This pasted text effectively illustrates the deeply interconnected nature of these factors. It's not just about one source of weapons or a single stream of funding. It's a complex and evolving ecosystem that sustains the conflict.
This idea that the conflict might be perpetuated by various actors for their own gain, both internal and external, is just so unsettling.
It is.
And really gives you, the learner, a lot to consider.
A lot to think about.
About the true obstacles to achieving lasting peace in Nagaland.
I mean, it's clearly not just about resolving stated grievances. There appear to be powerful vested interests at play. That might actively resist a peaceful resolution.
And it really underscores how critical it is to look beyond the surface level narratives. And really try to understand the underlying economic and political incentives. That are often driving these conflicts.
Often drive and sustain such protracted conflicts.
You only just scratched the surface here.
Tip of the iceberg.
Drawing out the key threads from the material you provided. But what stands out to you most? The learner.
Yeah, what are your takeaways?
What questions does this deep dive raise that you want to explore further?
What do you want to know more about?
Yeah, this really underscores
It does.
how vital it is to look beyond the headlines.
Absolutely.
And understand the deeper, often hidden forces at play in these seemingly localized conflicts.
Right.
And to really think about who truly benefits from the continuation of the status quo.
Who benefits from the way things are.
Yeah, it leaves you pondering.
It does.
What fundamental shifts would be necessary?
What would it take?
To dismantle such a deeply entrenched and seemingly self-sustaining system of conflict and violence.
That's the question.
It really is.
Yeah.